Okay, so hello everyone, and thanks for having us present remotely. Let's present as a slideshow. Does that work? Yes, I think. Okay. No. Yes. Well. Of course. Anyway, so let's present like this. I'm Gabriel Scherer, and this is work that has been done thanks to the help of Hugo Barrero, who was an intern with me this spring and summer. I will be watching the Discord for remote questions. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them remotely. And the organizers kindly set up a small laptop in the front so that I can see the room, so I can actually see you. And if there is a problem, you can wave. And well, most of the time I'll be looking at my slides instead. But still, you can do that. Okay. So the problem that we are working on is random generation for the purpose of random testing. And if you want to test, so random testing is pretty effective. And if you want to test a meta program, you need to generate valid programs. I work on the OCaml compiler, so ideally I would have a random generator of OCaml programs. And then generating a program that has valid syntax is pretty easy, but generating a program that is well-typed is in fact difficult. And the more complex your type system is, the more complex the generator would be that manages to generate a well-typed program. The problem is that as the type system grows more complex, you have to add more logic to your generator and also find some tricks to make it efficient enough and so on. And it grows into a monstrous pile of complexity. And the problem is that you already have one monstrous pile of complexity in your implementation, which is your type checker. So you don't want to have a second one. And the goal of this general research arc, if you want, is to find a way to use your type checker as a program generator so that you have only one monstrous pile of complexity in your whole implementation and not two that scales with the type system. So why is it hard? Well, of course, you can take a typing rule and read it from conclusion to premises as a generation rule. So for example, this typing rule for the application here tells you that if you want to generate, if you have a context gamma and you want to generate a program of type B, well, you can generate a random program T of type A to B, and then a random program U of type A, and there you go, you have made a choice of how to generate a program at type B. I call this leafward generation because you start with a problem at the root and you decompose it into sub-problems which are sub-nodes toward the leaves. Okay. The problem is, okay, if you know B, you will generate randomly T and U. How do you decide what A should be? Okay. And this is not so easy in practice. So you would think, okay, let's generate a random B, random A. So let's start by picking a random A. This is a terrible choice. So first, the search space becomes huge. And second, most choices of A will prevent you from either finding a T or a U that works. And so the generator will never, will become very slow and rarely succeed at generating well-typed programs. So you have to use tricks, okay? And it gets worse because in addition to this pretty simple rule, you have polymorphism maybe in your system. OCaml certainly does. And generating well-typed programs that do make meaningful use of polymorphism is more or less an open research question. So the most of the work on this problem has been done. There is a lot of interesting work by Palka. And the short answer is that it's hard and people don't really know how to do it. So how do you want to do this in a reasonably efficient way in terms of avoiding dead ends in the search space and backtracking? Well, what you want to do in the first rule, for example, is to, instead of picking a, you want to say, okay, there is an unknown type variable alpha that I will use instead of A, and then I will start generating T or maybe U, and that will tell me what alpha should be. So there will be some information propagated to learn what solution you want for alpha, and eventually you will get a complete type A. And in this way, you will complete, you will manage to apply this typing rule without blowing up the search space. So this is a natural ID. So one way to do it is to implement yourself in Prolog, which is very good at backtracking and unification. Paul Tarot has been doing that in the 2010s, and he pushed this to the limit. So he has several publications on efficient, uniform generators of simply typed programs in Prolog. And then there is very nice previous work by the PLT Redex community, where they have a language to describe type systems in general. And for any type system described in their language, they come up with a custom constraint generator and solver that will do this sort of efficient on-the-fly solving of random generation constraints. The problem is that none of these two approaches scale to a type system of the complexity of OCaml. Okay, so Redex works well for monomorphic programs, but for polymorphic programs, it doesn't work better than previous works. And I don't know if I could convince the maintainers of the current type checker to switch to Prolog. I suspect it would be pretty difficult. So instead, I have to find another way to use something with unknown type variables and unification. Okay, so what's another system that works like this? So let me check my camera. No camera anymore. Ah, yes, it is here. So does anyone have a guess at a system that is used in an implementation of a programming language that use unknown type variables and unification? No. I can see people nodding, but no one is raising their hand to answer. So yes, one system that works like this is inline linear type inference. So the idea is, okay, we already have a system that does unknown type variables and unification. Maybe we can use it for a random generation. So the approach is that instead of trying to generate full typing generations, we will generate in untyped terms incrementally. And then we will run type inference as a way to check that these untyped terms, partial untyped terms are correct. And if we run them early enough, so during generation, we can avoid getting into dead ends with programs that are ill-typed. And so we did that, and it worked. So we have a prototype which can do random generation of well-typed micro-ML program, by which I mean simply type calculus plus let with Kinley Miller style local generalization, so polymorphism. And this is built using a type inference engine, which we re-implemented for this purpose, but it's realistic. So it has the same design as Inferno, and we believe that it can scale to a type system of the complexity of OCaml. It has not been done, but it's plausible that it could work. So incremental term generation, well, the idea is you start from, okay, I know nothing at all about my term, this is the question mark, and then you pick a term former at random, so we are at the untyped level at this point. Okay, so let's do a let. Okay, so then you turn this whole into a term that is partially complete with two sub-holes, two parts that are still to be filled. So you pick the first hole and say, okay, let's do randomly a lambda, for example, and there you go, you progress. And of course, there are other branches that you could choose. So you can enumerate random untyped terms in this way, more and more complete. And the idea is that after each such step of generation, we will run the type inference engine, and we use a constraint-based type inference engine, so it generates constraints and then it solves them. And the trick is that you can solve, when you move from let to let with a lambda, you can solve the new bit of the new part of the constraint that comes from the lambda in the solver state that you had when you finished type checking the first partial term. So when you had only let, you end up in a certain solver state, and then you can rerun that state to work a bit more to type check the lambda. And if you do this, you get a sort of incremental type checking that will do just a small amount of work at each generation step, yet be able to kill the branches of the search space that would be ill-typed. Okay, so this is the idea, and it's pretty nice. A remark: well-typed terms are exponentially rare. If you have a large term, it's very, very unlikely to be well-typed. And so the naive approach that you could think of let's just generate a lot of untyped terms, and then we will filter out the ones that are not well-typed, Okay, so you start from any term and then you filter out the ill-typed ones. That will not work because it's very, very hard to find a well-typed term if you start from just a lot of terms. You have to guide search incrementally if you want to have chances of reasonable performance. So these question marks look like holes. And so when people say holes in programming language work, including, for example, the talk of Patrick that we had earlier, actually they mean meta variables. There are two problems. So one idea for how to do what I just described is, okay, let's enrich your type inference engine with meta variables, and then obviously you can do this. There are two reasons why I didn't want to do this. The first is that handling meta variables is work, so there are maps of meta variables to their definition because you need to be able to instantiate them and so on. And also, it's not so clear how to do local let generalization in presence of meta variables. Because if you know about Hillner-Milner type inference, it relies on the fact that you first type check the definition of the let completely, you get a type, and then you turn the local type variables into for all quantified variables in the type scheme. And then in the body, after the in, whenever you see X, you can instantiate it with the known type scheme. But of course, if there is a hole in the let, in the definition, you don't know what type scheme to compute, and you are stuck after the in if you see an occurrence of X. So it's a non-trivial problem to keep doing Hillner-Milner style let generalization in presence of unknown parts of the constraint. It's an interesting problem, but it's difficult, and I wanted to avoid dealing with that at this point. So instead, we did something a bit different, which is interesting, and I wonder if some people have done it before, which is syntax with subcomputations. So the idea is that you take your abstract syntax tree of your untyped terms. So for example, here I have var, app, apps, let, and log for source level locations to get decent error messages. And then you parameterize all of it over a functor f, okay? And you add an extra node, an extra constructor in your syntax, do, which takes as subterm a computation in f.t that returns terms. So I apologize for the OCaml syntax at the type level. The type constructor is on the right, and the type argument is on the left, which is arguably the correct way to write application in mathematics, but no one uses it, so it's a bit confusing. But this is the type constructor. You can think of it in general as the monad, if you want, and this is the type parameter term. So at this type, a subterm is either some concrete syntax or a computation in f.t that returns a term. So for example, if you instantiate this with a search monad m, then the values of untyped term m.term are syntactic terms, and some of their subterms are actually search problems, and there may be nested search problems. Okay, so you can think of them as describing a set of solutions in a pretty compact way. And in particular, you can implement, this is kind of cool, I think, the generic untyped term. So this is something of type term, okay, that describes the superposition of all possible untyped terms, modulo alpha equivalent. So what does the generic untyped term look like? Well, we have a gen that takes an environment, a list of bound variables. So it's just the gen in the empty environment. So this is the closed generic untyped term. And gen that takes an environment is just a do node. And then inside you have a monadic computation, okay, that is a sum. So this is a search monad, so you can say, well, this is an alternative, a list of alternative choices, which is either, well, one of the variables from the environment of bound variables, or an application with two subterms that are themselves generic untyped terms in the current environment, or an abstraction, and then the subterm has an extra x free variable that it can use, or a let, and then the definition of the let is in the current scope, and the right-hand side is in the scope extended with x. And this term, it contains a computation that actually describes the set of all possible closed terms. So this is something you can do with syntax with subcomputation. But then the problem is, okay, how do you extend the rest of your type checker to deal with this weird do node? And the answer is, well, it's easy. You just add more do nodes. So for example, here is the inference function in the inner type inference. So it takes, well, in the Inferno style, it takes an environment, it takes an untyped term, it takes an inference variable that is the result type of the term, and then it returns a constraint. So this is the constraint generation function. It generates a constraint that once solved, if it is satisfiable, it will return a type term. So this is the Inferno style. So the constraint does not tell you only fail or success. If it succeeds, it gives you a fully annotated version of your input term. And so, for example, so to extend it with subcomputation, now you take an untyped f term for a random some functor parameter f, and you return a constraint f type. So the type of constraints is also extended with subcomputation. So in your infer function, so this is, for example, the variable case is as you would expect in name inner type inference. So you look up in your environment for a polymorphic scheme for x. You generate an instance constraint. So you say that the variable w must be an instance of this polymorphic scheme. And then in this Inferno style where you elaborate at the same time, the instance constraint, if it succeeds, it returns a list of type parameters that have been used to instantiate the schema. And then you can describe how to return explicitly typed version of your input term, which is the same variable x, where you did a system F type application of all these types. Okay, so this is standard type inference code. And then if you have a do node, so this is a do node for the term, the type untyped term. It contains an untyped f term f.t. So you can use the map operation of the f functor to apply type inference under the f.t. So you get back, if you look at the time of infer, you get back a constraint f.t computation, so f.t. So you get something of type f.t applied to constraint f.t type term. So, and this you can pack under a do node. So this do node is a constructor of the constraint type. And what you get back is a constraint. So you have a computation that returns a constraint, and you pack it under a do, and you get a constraint because our type of constraint has subcomputations. So pretty easy, just 2 lines that you need to add, 3 lines to your existing function to support subcomputation. Then you have a constraint solver, okay? So you have a type of normal constraint that is either a return or an error. You add an extra constructor and-do for subcomputations. And then the constraint solver, you add a case that says, if I get a do in the constraint that I need to solve, I return a do in the normal constraint that maps over the resolution of the constraints below this P. And here you can, if you think about this, what happens with that is that the solver will stop on the first do node, and it will so here it will return a do event. It will so in particular if there is a do node within a let, it will never try to generalize over this. It will stop on the do node and it will wait until you decide to do something with this end-do result to go further. So in a sense, the system will only see fully typed terms in the end, and you don't have this problem of legendization with groups. Finally, when you have a normal constraint that can contain these do nodes, you need to get rid of the do nodes eventually. So if you know that M is a monad, you can implement a very simple function that takes a normal constraint and return a result, so either a value or an error, in the M.T monad. So when you see a do, you do a bind. And so recursively, so you bind under P, and then you run on every result, if you want, of P, you run the run function. This is a bit abstract, so just let's look at all of this together. In the case where M is a search monad, so you have this sum operator to add alternatives, you can define a generic untyped term, so you get an untyped term. Then we apply a cut size function to say, okay, I don't want all possible untyped terms, but only those whose size is 10, let's say, because otherwise my generator will blow up. Then I run the constraint generation function and I get a constraint with subcomputations in M that can return eventually a well-typed value. Then I can run my constraint solver and I get a normal constraint with stop computation that can eventually return a wet type value. Then I call the run function that we had just before, and I get something in the m.t monad that is the result. And then I can call the run function of the monad, so it goes from m.t to a type of infinite lazy sequences of OCaml, sec.t, and I can also filter out the error output, and I get a sequence of all wet type terms of this size. So easy. And the point is that I had to add a bit of logic at every layer to work with these subcomputations, but it's actually easy to do. A short demo. Wait, this is time for me to check how I'm doing on time. Okay, fine. I need to change the way I'm sharing my screen for the demo to have a chance of working. Sorry about that. Yes. Yes, good. So this looks like a nice environment to run the demo. Okay, so let's ask for a random term of size 10, and I want to see the types. So there you go, and you can see that there has been some polymorphism going on because there are a lot of for alls in the output. The size 10 is not the, so here what you see is the elaborated term with the type annotations, but the size is computed only on the untyped term. So there is a lot of type information, but it doesn't actually matter for the size. And here you can see that our prototype also supports tuple. So this is a let that destructs a tuple, and here you have a pair of this and that. Okay, so you see different terms. I think what did I promise to do in my demo? Yes, size 20, size 30, so let's do this. Okay, so this is a slightly larger term. This is a slightly larger term. Yes, and there is an exhaustive mode where I change the search monad that I use. Instead of having one where run does some random sampling of the search space, I can also list all the solutions in order, in the order determined by my generic untyped term. So what is the first well-typed term of size 30? For your eyes only, it looks like this. So this is a bunch of applications of the identity function nested together. Well, this is what our generator gives. If you use another generator, you will get another first term. And I can ask, so maybe it's easier to see with 10, and I can ask for 5 of them, and you can see that, well, there is some regularity, and eventually it starts doing something different. Okay. As this was me going off script. Size 100. So some challenge. Let's ask for the time. Okay. So here is a large term for to crash your type checker, generated in 10th of a second. But let's do better and let's do 300. Or maybe I'll just do one. Okay. So you can see that at size 300, it starts taking a bit of time. Okay. 7 seconds. Not too bad. And then the output is really large because of all these type annotations, but it's something. Okay. As you can see, performance is an issue because if I ask for a term of size 300, it is a bit slow. It takes 7 seconds. This is not so good for random testing because if you want to test your program, you need to generate a lot of terms quickly. And you can say, okay, do I really need to ask for a term of type of size 300? Maybe not. But the quick check wizard tells us that it's good to run. So even though most bugs can be reproduced with small inputs, let's say size 20, it's good to run the test on a large input, size 200, because an input of size 200 is more likely to contain the weird part of size 20 that makes the program crash. So in a sense, you get better coverage by starting with very large terms. So it's not realistic to do random testing with a generator that takes, let's say, 10 seconds to generate a new sample. So you need to have a generator that is well below 1 second and generates large enough terms. And so the current performance of our tool I think is adequate. It's not great, but it's not bad. I have not actually tried plugging it into a random testing framework, so I cannot tell you about bugs it would find and so on. But I can say that we did have to optimize the implementation of the search monad. I started with something very naive, and it did very badly. It would only scale up to size 15 or something. And now we have something that scales up to size 200 or more, uh, despite supporting Hindley-Milner polymorphism, which I think might be a first for a random generator of well-type programs. At least most examples deal with simply typed normal calculus with heuristics on top to deal with limited amount of polymorphism. Of course, we don't handle general system F-style polymorphism. We are in a restricted framework, but we can generate any micro-ML well-typed. So if performance is an issue, it means you get to see pretty pictures. So the pictures were all done by Hugo, my intern. So this picture shows you the average generation time for a given size. You can see that for small size, it's instantaneous. For size 100, it takes a third of a second. For size 150, it takes about 1 second. And then if you move larger, so we were kind of lucky with, so this is on Hugo's machine. Maybe my machine is better and my average is lower, but we had a 7-second run at size 300, and on his machine, the average is more like 16. And then if you try to go higher, I mean, you wait too long. And this is average, but in our experience, the runtime is sort of, it feels like you are sampling an exponential curve. So sometimes it's much, much longer. And sometimes it's much faster because if it's an average and it's only 60, and sometimes it's much, most of the time it's actually faster than that. Okay. So this is an approach to compare. So we compared with the naive approach of rejection sampling, that is generate untyped terms, and then you filter out the one that are ill-typed. And the way we do this comparison is we define a timeout to be at 10 seconds. So you try to generate a term. If it takes more than 10 seconds, you fail. And then you try to do that many times, 1,000 times, and you look at the ratio of attempts that succeeded. Okay, so here you can see on the graph on the left that with the naive rejection sampling approach, which you can implement with a off-the-shelf type checker without doing anything special with holes or incrementality or anything, all attempts at generating a term of type 10 succeeding below 10 seconds. The failure percentage is 0%. But then if you move at size 15, 30% of the time, we did not succeed in generating a well-typed term in less than 10 seconds. And you can see that the generator quickly becomes unusable with our implementation of type checking. So for the size 50, there is no chance of seeing a run. Well, there is very little chance of seeing a run that takes less than 10 seconds. Whereas for our generator, we are at a 0% failure rate. So we always take less than 10 seconds at size 200. And we still can generate about, so we fail 1/3 of the time with size 300, and we can actually push the generator until size maybe 500, and then it fails most often. It takes more than 10 seconds. So you can see that there seems to be a large gap in performance between the two. The intuition is, I believe that our approach is exponentially faster, but I don't know how to state that and check that formally, so I would be careful. At least it's much, much better, and it generates things that you could not hope to do with a naive approach. And finally, this is the last. Yeah. To stop for questions. Yes, yes. Okay, so I'm done. Let's take questions if you have some. Thank you.
Let's do the speaker.
If there are questions online on the Discord, I'm happy to take them, and otherwise I just listen. Yes.